All right, today we're jumping into one of the most incredible stories in modern tech. We're talking about how artificial intelligence went from something you would only read about in science fiction to something that's, well, pretty much everywhere in our lives. So, yeah, let's get right into it. Way before anyone wrote a single line of code for this stuff, you had these incredible visionaries like Isaac Asimov. They were already wrestling with the whole idea of AI. And they weren't just, dreaming up cool thinking machines. No, they were actually setting the stage, laying down the rules, and asking the big questions that scientists, decades later, would try to solve.
So, how did that happen? I mean, really, how do you take something as out there as a positronic brain from a sci-fi novel and actually build it, turn it into real code that works in the real world? Well, that's the journey we're on today. And the funny thing is, our story doesn't start in some high-tech lab. Nope, it starts in the minds of writers. You could almost say they were the original architects of AI, sketching out these amazing blueprints for what might be possible someday. I mean, just think about these ideas for a second. We're talking robots with consciousness, universal translators, a computer that's actually self-aware, and even a moral code, right? The famous laws of robotics. These weren't just fun ideas for a book. They became the actual challenges, the big goals that the very first AI researchers decided to take on.
And that right there, that's the pivot. That is the exact moment when this big dream from fiction starts to get real. It starts to turn into an actual field of science. So, this new field, this new ambition, it needed a name. And that's what they came up with: artificial intelligence. It's a pretty simple name for a goal that is, let's be honest, ridiculously complex. And the term itself was officially born at this one key event that, well, it changed absolutely everything. And this is it, the 1956 Dartmouth Workshop. This is basically ground zero for AI as we know it. You had this group of absolutely brilliant minds all in one place, and they were just buzzing with optimism. I mean, they seriously believed they could build a thinking machine in a single summer. But, as you can probably guess, that incredible optimism was about to get a major reality check.
Yeah, because after that first big burst of excitement, things didn't exactly go to plan. Progress didn't skyrocket. Actually, it was the total opposite. The entire field was about to hit a wall and go into this long, cold period of struggle that we now call the AI winter. And that name, AI winter, it just fits perfectly, doesn't it? It really captures the mood. All those big initial promises started to feel empty. The funding, both from the government and private investors, just dried up. And suddenly the whole field was facing this huge wave of skepticism. It really felt like the dream was being put on ice. So why? Why did everything just grind to a halt? Well, for a few big reasons. First, the ambitions were absolutely massive, but the tools they had were, well, primitive. To put it in perspective, the computing power they were working with was just a tiny fraction of what's in your smartphone right now. Plus, they just didn't have the massive data sets you need to teach a machine. And on top of all that, some of the core theoretical problems were just way too hard to solve back then. The promises simply couldn't match the performance. Okay, so this timeline really shows you that whole cycle of boom and bust. You can see the first AI winter hitting in the 70s. Then there's this little thaw in the 80s thanks to something called expert systems. But then, wham, a second, even colder winter hits in the late 80s and 90s. But then, look at the 2000s. Everything starts to change. All those seeds that were planted decades before, they finally had the right environment to grow. We're talking massive amounts of data from the internet, and of course, Moore's Law just kept delivering more and more computing power. It was like spring had finally arrived for AI. And that reawakening, that AI spring, led us straight to where we are right now. We're living in the AI revolution. This is the part of the story where all those old sci-fi dreams stopped being dreams and actually became a real, tangible part of our world. I mean, just look at this comparison. It's incredible. That universal translator from Star Trek that seemed like pure fantasy, it's literally on your phone right now in translation apps. Those talking conversational computers, yep, we call them Alexa and Siri, and we talk to them every single day. All those sci-fi ideas that got those pioneers at Dartmouth so excited, they're not fiction anymore. They're just features. So you gotta understand that today's AI isn't just one single thing. It's more like a team of specialists all working together. You've got natural language processing. That's what lets AI understand what we say and write.
Then there's machine learning, which is kind of the engine of the whole operation, finding all the important patterns in huge piles of data. And then there's computer vision, which lets machines see and make sense of images and videos. It's all of these different fields working in sync that makes this whole AI revolution possible.
Okay, so we followed the story all the way from a wild dream to a daily reality, right through all those tough winters and the eventual spring. But, of course, the story is nowhere near finished. So what's next? Let's talk about the chapter that's being written right now.
When you really step back and look at it, this whole journey, from a science fiction novel all the way to the algorithm on your phone, it's really a story about us. It's a story about human ambition. It's about our endless curiosity to figure out our own intelligence and our constant drive to build things that make us more. And that leaves us with one final and I think really powerful question to think about. For decades, right, we've been the teachers. We've been feeding the machines our data, our language, our art, our everything. But now they're starting to create and even reason in ways we never saw coming. So the question kind of flips on its head. It's not just what they learn from us anymore. It's what will we learn from them? And maybe more importantly, what will we learn about ourselves?